You know, this is my first impression of the board, and it is very cheap, one of the cheapest ones I reviewed, but I think it might be a pretty good option for some of you out there. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things, and today we're taking a look at the cheapest electric skateboard that I've done a review on to date, and that is the Yeeplay M1. First off, I'll hit you with some of the quick specs. This is a dual hub motor board, very similar to some other hub motors that you may have seen on the channel in the past. This specific model happens to be the M122. It has a 36 volt, 4.4 amp hour battery, and Yeeplay also makes a little bit more expensive model, the M130. This specific model has an advertised range of 12 to 14 miles, and it will give you a top speed of supposedly 22 miles per hour. It is built on this pretty uniquely shaped Canadian maple deck. It has a pretty cool graphic option up here on the grip tape. I think aesthetically the board looks pretty good. And then to my surprise, when Yeeplay sent me this board, they actually laser engraved my name into the bottom of the deck there. Talon Sei. This board, of course, came with a charger and a skate tool. This is the controller that it came with. As you can tell, this is pretty much the exact same controller as the Meepo board. After riding so many electric longboards, it's definitely not my favorite controller. However, maybe they did something with the ESC in here, and I'm hoping this thing might be a little bit smoother than that Meepo. It also seems to be using the same hub motors as the Meepo and the Wowgo. Like I've said in the past, a lot of these Chinese boards source all of their parts from the same factory, so as you can see, all of these covers, they look really similar to other boards that I looked at in the past. The trucks and wheels all look pretty similar. This one does have a battery indicator on the board itself, so that's a nice touch. And right now, as I'm filming this video, this board is on sale for $259. Like I said, definitely the cheapest board I reviewed, but it looks kind of promising, especially for that price point. So let's go outside and see how this thing actually performs. Hey, hello, it's me from the future to bring you guys an important correction to this video. It was brought to my attention that after I had already filmed this entire video that there was another fee when buying this board that I wasn't aware of. I'm going to the website right now to check out the actual prices. Here we have the Yeeplay eBoard M1 on sale for $259, like I said. Going to add that to my cart, enter my customer information in case any of you guys want to come and say hi to me. Continue to shipping method, and shipping method, the only one that I can choose is $109. That brings the grand total to $368 with this board shipped to your door. Granted, this is still the cheapest option that I have reviewed so far on this channel. However, I was kind of under the impression that there was free shipping because when I was comparing this board to two other boards, which you will see later in the video, both of those boards had free shipping, so it kind of makes sense that this one is so similar to those, but it's coming in at a cheaper price. So keep that in mind as you go through this video. I will also go through, fast forward to the part where I compare these boards and talk about prices. I will update the video with notes just so you guys know that you are getting the most correct information at the date that I'm filming this video. Alright, we are out here and it is starting to get hot and humid in Miami Beach. I think I like it though. I think I like it for now. A couple things that I already find kind of interesting about this board is that it is very similar in size to the Cool Wheel, but at the same time it uses the same kind of motors and skate technology as the Meepo and the Wowgo. It sort of seems like a mashup of those boards combined, but at a very cheap price. So I'm curious to see how this thing actually performs and rides. The board turns on right here like the rest of them, but this one also has the smart turn on technology. So if I put the board down, it has a nice kicktail so it doesn't slam onto the ground. I'll simply roll the board a little bit, flick it back up, and as you can see, it is now on. The controller is exactly the same as a Meepo, so I will press and hold this bottom button here and it will turn on. Has some LEDs which are kind of hard to see, but if you have it in hand in real life, you can make it out without an issue. 3 different modes, low all the way up, medium in the middle, and high on the bottom. I'm gonna start in the low mode because some people like to know what it's like to ride slow. Let's check it out. Much like all of the boards, the low mode is very slow, probably only doing like maybe not even 10 miles an hour right now. This mode is good for getting to know how the board works, for beginners obviously. Let's check out the brakes real quick. Seem to be working just fine. Pop it into medium mode, give this one a try. Yeah, this one's a little better. The trucks feel really nice too. I'm on one of the nicer roads that I typically ride on and do testing on, but carves really nicely. The board sits a little bit higher than some of the other options out there. As you can see, it sort of looks like monster truck status, but it's not that hard to get used to. I'm now gonna open the Tracks app on my phone, which I use for tracking how far and how fast I can take these boards. A lot of people ask me questions about this. I used to use the Google Tracks app, but they just don't support it anymore and you can't find it in the Play Store. So I'll leave a link to the one that I use. It's just called Tracks on Google Play. It's not made by Google, but it works pretty much the same way. I'll hit record, now recording the tracks. I'm gonna pop this thing into high mode and take it the normal route. Here we go in the high mode from a dead stop. Let's see if this thing has the power to move me. Oh yeah, that's pretty quick too. The acceleration curve seems smooth right from the start. It's gonna be hard to tell until I actually get to go full speed over and over again. That's actually where I ran into trouble with the Meepo. At first it seemed really smooth, but then the more I tested it, even after the video fact, I realized that it kind of cut out and got choppy once you got up to the top speed. So let's see how the brakes work in high mode. Not the strongest. I'm gonna try that one more time from full speed to complete braking. Yeah, it might not be the strongest, but they seem to be working fine for now. I'm gonna keep on riding and I will check in with you guys at the first checkpoint. It is.
I'm glad my son didn't see that.
You wanna try it?
What? Sure. That'd be awesome.
If it's alright with your parents.
Yeah, I'm alright.
That's very nice of you.
Alright.
What do you say? Thank you very much. I mean,
Yeah, no
hello. There you go. Thank you.
Duncan.
What do you think, man?
That's awesome.
It's awesome?
Yeah.
Alright. As I was riding by that family, I heard the dad say to the wife, "Hey, is that one of those electric skateboards?" So I stopped. Their son was interested in a boosted board for a long time, so I let him try it. Brand new board, and he said it was awesome. So hopefully this thing lives up to its awesomeness. It's time for the brick hill test. This thing should have no problem climbing up this thing, much like the other boards with the same exact motors. The real question will be, how does it feel on the legs? Because this deck is definitely a lot stiffer than some of the other options. Alright guys, we're back with the first 3.41 miles covered. Total ride time of about 22 minutes and a max speed of 20 miles per hour. They advertise 22 based off of their rider weight testing. I'm probably a little bit heavier than that, so 20 miles an hour, that's not too bad. I think that's actually starting to become my threshold of electric skateboards. If it goes anything under 20, chances are it's probably not for me. I'm gonna start off with the controller because I think I actually found out what my problem was with the Meepo board. This obviously uses the same controller, and I'm assuming the motherboards in them are very similar as well. So after riding that board a handful of times and then this one just now, I realized that it still has that same kind of choppiness feeling. I found out that what it is both the short throw of this controller as well as a little bit of delay between the controller and the board itself. When you're riding at any speed, no matter what it is, you only have this much room to go from dead stop to full throttle. Because of that, every little minute movement of your thumb is going to give you more power than you're probably expecting. And And then I notice it most in the higher power modes because when you're rocking full throttle all the time, you obviously have to control your speed. So typically I just let off, don't use the brakes or anything, and then I'll slowly rock back onto the throttle. Now when you're doing that at full speed at about 20 miles an hour, by the time that I let go of the throttle and then start rocking back on it, it cuts the power and then it tries to get the motors back up to speed, and it causes this like little weird delay thing. So that's what I was kind of feeling with it not being as smooth as some of the other boards. Any other boards that use a controller with a scroll wheel typically have a longer throw, so it's a little bit more controllable. So I'm starting to find that maybe it's just a characteristic of companies that use this controller. It's not a complete downside. I'm sure if I only rode boards with this controller for a while, I could get used to it, but it's not my favorite. Now let's check out the board itself. It is pretty cool that it does say my name on it, kind of like that. So as of right now, nothing really jumps out at me about this board that I like other than the deck and how it carves. I do like the shorter deck size and the deck shape. You wouldn't think that a couple inches shorter would make a difference, but it definitely does, at least in my opinion. This definitely doesn't flex as much as some of those other decks, but it does have a nice concave. My feet feel planted when I'm riding, and sometimes it's nicer to ride a stiffer board like this, especially if you're into carving and then sliding, things like that. It really all comes down to personal preference, so it's really whatever you are into. The hub motors seem fine, very similar to both the Wago and the Meepo. The trucks feel okay too because the board sits so high. The combination of the wheels and trucks, it sort of makes you feel like you're up on stilts, but at the same time when you're leaning into carves, it kind of has a cool feeling to it. Both the power level on the controller and the board both show that it dropped a bar, so I should be at about 60%, which was much like the other boards that I tested in the past up to this point. The wheels are very similar to the other boards as well, however I think it's a little bit more shaky on the legs just because of the lesser flex that this deck has. Not a whole lot to say about this board other than what I've said so far up to this point, so let's go back to testing this thing and I will come back with my final first impressions. So much traffic in South Beach. If you're driving over riding an electric skateboard, you're doing something wrong. You know, this is my first impression of the board and it is very cheap, one of the cheapest ones I reviewed, but I think it might be a pretty good option for some of you out there. I really do love the way this thing carves, especially on nice, smooth roads like this. Another plus side of having a stiff deck like this makes it a little bit easier for doing things like this. Riding off of curbs. We're starting to slow down. I'm only on 10% left now. Hopefully I can ride closer back to my apartment and I don't end up having to push. I almost made it. Alright guys, I'm back to give you my final first thoughts, first impression of the Yeeplay M122. First thing we gotta do is check out the app and see how this thing finally performed in the end. As you saw, I did ride the board until it died completely and I ended up having to push it back a couple of blocks, which wasn't a huge deal because they are hub motors, easier to push than a belt-driven board. However, in the heat and humidity, I would much rather have power to make it all the way to where I'm going. So on the site, they advertise a 12 to 14 mile range. However, I only made it 8.75 miles. I had a max speed of a little over 20 miles an hour, which is good. However, that distance, doesn't really live up to what they say. Granted, if I weighed less or was riding in the low or medium mode, I probably could have stretched it out to maybe 10, possibly 12, but That's not really how I'm going to be riding electric skateboards. But in the end, 8.75 miles is still longer than I get on my original Gen 1 boosted board, and the price of that compared to the Yeeplay, I could buy about 5 of these boards to one of those boosted. Now I'm gonna cut right to the chase. Is this board worth $250? This is my first impression, but I'm gonna say hell yeah, I think that's definitely worth that low price. Comparing this to the Meepo and the Wowgo, nothing really stuck out to me that those boards should cost more than this one does. I did go a little bit further and faster on the other boards, however, for a first impression, this seems like it would be a pretty good option. A lot of people like to ask very specific questions in relation to boards and comparing them, so based off of the Yeeplay and the Meepo, they both ride very similar, especially because they use the same controller and probably the same motherboard as well. This board is about $150 cheaper. This one, however, goes further and faster, obviously has a different deck, flexes a little bit more. So depending on your cash situation when buying boards, I would say both of these are pretty good options. Now comparing the Yeeplay to the Wowgo 2S, this one has very similar characteristics to the Meepo, however the controller is much better. It costs a little bit more money, but I think those extra couple of dollars are worth it to get the controller and the actual control that you get out of this board over the Meepo. The Yeeplay is stiffer and cheaper, so it really comes down to personal preference. What can you afford and what type of board do you like? What riding style are you? Do you want a board that flexes a lot and almost feels like a surfboard, or do you want a long board that rides almost like a traditional skateboard? It has a little bit of a nose and tail. You can take it off curbs a lot easier than you can a board like this. And then comparing it to something like the Cool Wheel, this board is definitely a lot more expensive. However, the controller is really good. They have very similar decks, about the same stiffness. I would say that the Yeeplay might have a little bit more flex to it. And I should mention, out of all of these Chinese boards, I typically end up riding this one over the Wowgo and the Meepo. The controller is a little bit goofy at first. The design is just not very traditional. However, it is a very good controller, and I actually put a lot of miles on this board so far. If you thought the Cool Wheel was a good option when you saw my review of this board, but you don't have that much cash, then maybe the Yeeplay might be your next best option. Granted, you're not going to go as fast and as far, however, the ride characteristics are very, very similar. I should also mention that there has been no connectivity issues between the controller and any of these boards. So as of right now, I have never had a Chinese board like any of these fail on me. And depending on what you like in the ride characteristics of these skateboards and your cash point, I think they're all pretty decent options. So thank you to Yeeplay for sending this out to me to check out for a review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like on it. A lot of people have been asking questions about comparing all of these boards together. I will get around to it at some point. However, as I review new boards, it gives me just another base point to compare to. Like I always say, this board will go into my quiver of boards that I ride around here pretty much every single day. So if anything changes, like anything breaks or it somehow magically becomes faster or has a longer range, I will update that in the video description down below. I have been taking some of your feedback, and I actually have a couple more boards on their way to my apartment right now, so if you wanted my opinion on other popular boards, chances are that you will find those videos on the channel in the next couple of weeks. I believe that's all that I had, so if you guys are new to the channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every week, and that's gonna be all for today. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.